is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today, it's my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Hold up the fours. Day 4.
Did you guys do that in high school?
No, absolutely not. We weren't good enough to do that, or cool enough.
We did that. We did the fours in high school. It was a big thing.
Big fours. Fours up.
Big fours.
Fours
Start
up.
of the fourth
Four
quarter.
horsemen.
I was very animated about it. If you could imagine what my general just aura would have been when I was a senior in high school.
I've seen the picture of the line. Yeah. I know your role. Like, you don't have, I know this. I've seen every archetype of football player in my life. I know what Robert Mays was in high school, and in a good way.
I was awful. Thinking back on what it must have been like to spend time with 18-year-old me now, as I think back on it as an adult, I truly can't even comprehend it. Honestly, what it was like to spend time with 28-year-old me, it was just completely insufferable. But when you go back a little bit further, I'm pretty embarrassed about it 20 years after the fact. I'll say that now.
One was acquired version. For me, it was acquired version of the same, just annoying person. No, it was, for me, it was just, I ever since I saw that picture and I've heard you talk about, and you long snapped. It's just like, I know you. I know Robert Mays. I went to camp with somebody, Robert Mays. I played ball with Robert Mays. His name was Cody Overcashier. Shout out Cody.
That's what I've realized as I've gotten older, is that there's truly nothing special about me in any capacity, which, it's a fine place to, when you land there in your 30s, it's a good place to be.
At least for me, it was like just my hopes, going to training camp every day with Dante Culpepper and like Gus Frerotte and seeing them throw and going, yeah, I ain't got that.
It's a good thing to learn early.
Like 14, like at 15, just having realistic expectations. So I don't know if that was good or bad, but ended up here on day 4 of free agency in 2024. So I think that was very good.
Not a bad place to be. We still got plenty to talk about. We had some big time moves happen overnight that we're going to dig into. We've also had some stuff trickle out here over the last 10 to 15 minutes that is going to be worth talking about. Some very fun moves. Let's talk about the headline grabbing move from yesterday, though. All week, it seemed like the Calvin Ridley sweepstakes was going to boil down to the New England Patriots and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Makes sense. The Jags moves previously with Gabe Davis and everything else they'd done, having Calvin Ridley back in the fold made it all make sense. The Patriots have no receivers and a ton of money, too much money, arguably. So they also made sense. But then at the 11th hour, as free agency technically gets going yesterday afternoon, the Tennessee Titans swoop in and sign Calvin Ridley to a 4-year, $92 million deal with $50 million guaranteed. And there is a cascading effect from this. There's a lot to dig into on the Titans side. There's a lot to dig into on the Jag side. And I think we have to now acknowledge what's going to happen with New England. So before we get to Jacksonville and how badly they have bungled this, let's talk about the way that the Titans have approached free agency. Them making a splash like this, combined with all of the other pretty aggressive moves that they've made over the last couple of days, bringing Ridley into the fold and kind of looking at it as a whole, what do you make of the way that the Titans have approached all this?
They're just like, are good players available? Let's go. Like, we have means to get.
We have too much money to spend.
Go get it. Whatever. I know that player. I've heard of Tony Pollard. Sure. Let's sign him up. Get him on board. But that's what it seems like on the outside. And I think it's, for them, they said, well, we need receivers, and obviously we need offensive line. We're not getting a good level offensive lineman that we can splurge on like this, but we can get a good yes, it's an overpay. Everyone's gonna be overpaid at this level. If you're setting a market like this.
Look at the remaining free agents. Look at the remaining free agents at receiver. If this was always going to happen, if he wanted it to happen, he was going to be the last guy left.
Yes, because he's a needle mover. He has a skill set that you usually don't see. Even if you're low on him, at the very worst, he's a high end 2, and or a very low end 1. We just saw what Michael Pittman went for. So if you even say in the same tier, this is
great comparison. If Michael Pittman's going to get paid $21 million, and Calvin Ridley's a little bit older, but I think a contract within that range makes sense, even if you can see that it's a little bit rich.
That's it. It's just because of the skill set. You don't, these guys, it's hard to, you have to usually use a high pick, a first or second rounder, or you have to pay for it. So that's why I ended up there. So for me, it just seems like the Titans are like, yeah, we can get a good player. Why not add him? Hey, let's see what we got with Will Levis. That'll let us know. I just kind of feel like it's seat of their pants, but I don't mean that in a bad way. Just more just like, yeah, sure. But yeah, bring him on board. Sure. He upgrades our roster and we have the means to add him right now. Who else are we paying? I think that's where they're at. As far
My
as
biggest question about this, and we have not mentioned his name on this show until you just did, is where are they going with Will Levis? How do they see Will Levis? Are they trying to surround him with enough pieces to get some answers on what he is? This is a new coaching staff, even though it's the same front office carrying over. Is he their guy of the future? He's just somebody I haven't thought a lot about, and we haven't talked much about as it relates to this offseason and how the Titans might approach it. But going out and getting a Calvin Ridley, making sure you got a center. They signed Lloyd Cushenberry to that big deal. This feels to me like, let's get the requisite pieces in place so we can have an accurate interpretation of what this guy is by the end of year 2 in a way that we couldn't really last year. He was a rookie because the coaching staff wasn't there and the supporting cast wasn't there. Let's try to rectify both of those, even if it requires us to get a little bit ahead of ourselves in the amount of money that we're spending.
I think that's it. It's for sure getting answers, because it's like, all right, well, last year he's throwing to guys with hyphens in their last names. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just, guy like spin the wheel, and that's who they're throwing. Like Treylon Burks in a role that doesn't fit for him. That's who he's targeting. Josh Wiley, at tight end, rookie tight end, day 3 guy. And this is what he has to work with. So I think that's what it is. Just to get an answer. Do we have to pivot from here? Do we keep running it back with him? Do we get some answers? Do we get no answers? Because Will Levis kind of played that way too. There was a lot of highs and a lot of lows. But the highs were like, hey, but that's what he was as a prospect. So in a weird way, we got no answers, even if he played all those games, because it was kind of more of the same and also not a great setting, just like he was in Kentucky. So yeah, I think that's kind of just how they're going about it. And opens up possibilities to add a blue chip offensive lineman, which is always just a lot of fun. They can turn that into a real strength, that's great to whatever building blocks you want to go from there.
So I want to go to the draft here in a second. I want to ask you, how do you see Treylon Burks fitting into this equation? Because now you have DeAndre Hopkins, who's just a prototypical X receiver, which allows you to kind of put Calvin Ridley in the Z role that he should be in and should have been in Jacksonville. But where does that leave Treylon Burks? Do you think that he's a potential fit in the slot? How do you think he works off of Ridley? Like, how is this all going to get pieced together in your mind?
I actually, this is going to be Burks' best chance to hit. I think what he's shown so far is kind of like he's such a project. He was, had to be pointed in the right direction at Arkansas. And he was in such a weird role where it's like he was in motion every play. He was doing jet sweeps and vertical routes on like every single snap. So it was going to be transition no matter what. They tried to make him a little bit of an outside receiver, which I would too. I drafted you in the first round. Let's see what else we can work with.
He's got size. I mean, it makes sense as to why you tried him out that way.
He can roll. He can actually get vertical, but I think he's best in the slot as a move guy. I actually kind of like him and Ridley in it's the weirdest way. You have the big guy as the slot guy and the smaller guy as the outside guy. But actually works really well. Like I actually kind of like it, but I think Burks he's still going to be a frustrating player, but this is giving him the best chance of sustainability. So I actually like it because he can stay in the slot and work with Ridley a little bit when they got kind of like a 2-man game.
And we pivot to the draft focus now. It seems like this gives them the opportunity to go offensive line if they want to with the 7th overall pick. There were always going to be options in that range. We were wondering, based on Brian Callahan's history of really chasing weapons, were they going to go tackle with the 7th overall pick, or they were going to go with one of the weapons? Now, if you feel like the weapons are set enough where maybe if you should definitely still take bites at the apple. If you want to draft one in the 2nd round, the 3rd round, DeAndre Hopkins is getting a little bit older. You don't know what you have in Treylon Burks. I don't think they're finished, but I think this decreases the urgency to have to come away with one in the top 10, which if you're a team maybe at the back half of the top 10 that also needs a receiver, this is music to your ears and music to my ears personally.
Oh my God. It's always just a reminder of how many Bears fans I follow on Twitter, and outside of just you.
We're also becoming more vocal because there's
very
real
vocal
excitement for the first time in like the last 3 years.
You remember, it's such a large market, and then when things like this happen, it's like, oh yeah, that's actually been a reminder too of Washington fans this year. Now that they have the number 2 pick, and I did a couple of I've done a couple Washington shows, talking about like, oh, May and Daniels and all this stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, you guys have a huge fan base, because it's like anything I drop, I hear about a lot about all these quarterbacks. So it's like just a reminder of all that. But no, like what you're saying, the trickle down of this is the receiver thing becomes a want, not a need. And and I think the offensive line is like, wow, now we can kind of pick our poison here, which is what you want to be in a team building prospect. You don't want to be, we need to get this. We have to, we have to move up for this. You want to be in like, we want choices. Talk about ability to pivot and team building, that matters too. So I like this for the Titans, even if it's an overpay. I'm kind of just like, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't you try and do this if you can help your team in other ways? I
I'd be
think
curious how the rest of the line shakes out because
Yeah.
Dillard is really a left tackle only. We've learned that over the last few years. So even if you still have him on the roster, it's him and Dylan Radins, and that you still need a right tackle, even if you draft one of the left tackles in the top 10. So how they end up shaking out the rest of this, they signed Sadiq Charles on a cheap deal. I assume he's going to compete for one of the guard spots. It was a complete rebuild along the offensive line, except for Peter Skoronski. So it's always going to be an uphill battle, and they still have work to do, but at least this gives them a chance to take a big swing at that early in this year's draft.
The never normal Titans. That's just how they're going to be.
Speaking of never normal, let's get to what this means for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because so now, I tweeted this out yesterday as soon as this happened. Just the roster you're now looking at with the 2024 Jags in the last year of Trevor Lawrence's rookie deal. So what you've done is you've signed Gabe Davis, you've lost Calvin Ridley. So now you still need another receiver as part of this. Yep. You really don't have any options in free agency because the two guys that are now available on the top of the list are Mike Williams and Hollywood Brown. I said this yesterday. The Jags already have a Mike Williams and a Hollywood Brown at home. The way that you're going to use Gabe Davis is how you'd want to use Mike Williams. The way that you're going to use Christian Kirk is how you'd want to use Hollywood Brown. So there's a redundancy there where even those options aren't attractive if you could get them at the right price. So now you're sitting in a situation where if you don't get a receiver in the first 2 rounds, the idea of maximizing the offense, which is how you've pivoted every single one of your resources this offseason, goes out the window. Like in the long run, this might be fine. They were never going to give Calvin Ridley $23 million a year, and picking a receiver in the first round and getting on that timeline.
That's where I was going to take this conversation, but yes.
In 2026, that's probably fine. But for this year, when again, your last year when he's cheap, it is just such a letdown when you consider what it could have been with Ridley and now what they're probably going to be looking at. And now it's the same thing we talked about. The fragility of having to come away with the guy in the first round is not the position that you want to be in. And suddenly that's where they are.
If they want to be where I think they wanted to be in 2024, they need to not only nail a receiver draft pick in the top 2 rounds, but that guy has not just like nail where we're like, oh, he has 800 yards. Wow, nice season. Wow, this guy can really be something a day. Like nail it, like 1,100 yards. This guy might be a Pro Bowler if it goes right. Like that's like as far as like what they want to be. Like that's what they have to replace. They're replacing. They have to. If you look at it just through this lens in 1 year, they have to replace the Calvin Ridley role, which is an X receiver who eats 10 to 12 targets in a game. That's a lot to ask of any rookie. And this is a loaded rookie class. It's just really hard. But having said that, that's just 2024. Why that's frustrating, it's a missed window because what you're saying, the Trevor Lawrence contract. Pay him all the stuff down the road that we're going to have to talk about probably a whole bunch of times. But they might stumble in to a good answer down the road. That guy might turn to 800 yards to 1,100 yards to 1,200 yards and turn into a true number 1 guy. Like they might stumble into the right answer. The thing is, it's Trent Baalke making the pick. He doesn't like believe in drafting receivers high. Like this is just his philosophy. He buys made products. That is his team building philosophy. When you look at his receiver picks over the years,
and a receiver specifically, that's the exact opposite way that you're supposed to go right now when you consider the surplus amount of guys who are coming into the draft.
That's exactly it. It's just a very, very, and it's all just, and John Shipley pointed out too, is because they waited until
the Jags.
He covers the Jags. He does a great job. And Ship just had a great point where he said, this is all preventable if you just look at the Josh Allen part of this. Just if they didn't wait until not only the 11th hour and 50th minute to go, hey, let's talk to Josh Allen and his people. No, oh shoot, it didn't come together in 12 hours. Wow, we got to tag him. If they just managed that and actually rewarded this guy that had underlying pressure numbers that showed he was building onto a breakout season like he had this year.
24-year-old effective edge rusher.
He had all of his underlying pressure numbers showed that he was not only just like a very good pass rusher, he was on the cusp of having a 15 sack season. Weird. He had a 17 sack season or whatever he had this year. But all that stuff, the QB hits, all that stuff. He was a good player already before this year. But again, this is the Quincy Williams stuff. Their self-scouting sucks. Like they just don't like can't you should reward that. Get on it early. I already just knocked the other day the Eagles and going, well, do you want to pay Landon Dickerson early? Hey, at least they paid him early and got ahead of the market and got ahead of all this. Because now you pay him, then you freeze up the franchise tag, which you then can use on Calvin Ridley, and then you can just figure out what it is, and you're not forced into this mess that they're in this situation right now. But it's just It's just a mess. It's just such a mess with them always. And we're
Well,
going to
you
do
look up the
disappointing
numbers.
teams. Disappointing teams. Yeah, the Jaguars were one of them for like how they went about this first week of free agency.
Looking at the numbers from 2022, Josh Allen had 67 pressures. That was 10th among all edge rushers, tied with Brian Burns, who just got the second biggest edge rushing contract in the entire NFL after Nick Bosa. But instead of giving him any sort of extension, the Jags refused to do that, don't have the tag, and now lose Calvin Ridley. You give up a third and a fifth to do that for however many games of Calvin Ridley. And so many people in the last 24 hours I've been like complaining about this, have said, well, they were good in 2022. You know, they've been a playoff team. Want more for yourselves.
That's it.
We were intrigued by them in 2022 because it was an odd offense that they were getting the most out of.
Yep.
The whole entire point of this
I want to misfit toys.
Is to build on that. That was the promise of the Calvin Ridley thing. It was to take this oddity, this like curiosity of a skill position group that they had gotten the most out of as Trevor was ascending and be like, all right, we're going to stamp our flag. We are going to be a competitive team. We're going to be a contender now with whatever you think of him, above average, firmly above average quarterback play for peanuts. This is your chance. And in a lot of ways, they have squandered that chance. I think Trevor is good enough that they're going to be relevant with him for a long time. And again, if they get a receiver and a cost-controlled contract, it's probably going to be okay in the long run.
Right.
But to have a rookie quarterback deal with a guy playing at the level he's capable of, and for this to be the roster that you're ultimately going to trot into that season, it's a disappointment. There's no other way around it, even if they've had some nice moments over the last couple of years.
And just the resources they had, all the cap space. I know cap space is usually it's kind of a mirage about what that means for your roster and what you have to do with it. But they're just how they've wielded
That's
that.
But as other teams have had these rookie quarterback contracts, they've wielded them in positive ways.
In great ways. And that's what I mean. And just in the moments, in those original signings 2 years ago, we were frustrated. And then just the use of draft picks and the use of how they've used that draft capital that they've had. It's just like, just one after another, missing point, missing point. And even just back to the Josh Allen thing. I was writing about Will Anderson for when I did awards stuff at the end of the year, defensive rookie of the year. And I was looking back, okay, data all went back to 2019. I was looking at I think it was like top pressure rates for rookie pass rushers. And it was like Micah Parsons, was on top of everything. Okay. There's some Nick Bosa. There was Will Anderson, like top 3, top 4 and everything was Josh Allen. Just under their nose has been this guy, and they have yet to reward him. He got into a tag situation. Sorry, it's just like one after another. Like they have only so many stars on this team, and they act like they still have to prove it. It's like, so what does this mean? Are you just going to reward guys that are outside your building? Like, what does that mean for draft picks? I don't know. Just top down just stinks, and just from the outside, it just stinks, and I hate it all.
It's been really frustrating, and I think it will continue to be really frustrating unless they completely nail this draft in a way that they haven't, in the way they have not with the last couple drafts.
Yeah.
Last team for which this is relevant, the New England Patriots lose out on Calvin Ridley. They still need a pass catcher somewhere along the way. We talked last week after the Jacoby Brissett signing. Is this going to be a situation you want to put a rookie quarterback into? And I still think that question is worth asking. But while Mike Williams or Marquise Brown may not necessarily fit where the Jags are right now, I do think a professional receiver with the pulse is an additive element for the Patriots as it currently stands. So there's still options out there for them in a way there might not be for Jacksonville.
They're a good landing spot for actually like a buy low Mike Williams. I agree. I actually don't mind that at all because that
just supercharged Devontae Parker from what you've gotten over the last couple years.
That's exactly it. It's pun intended. No, I think it's really and also for a young quarterback, he's what you love.
Just toss it
at him. Throw it at him. Whatever. I don't know the read. 1-on-1, take it. Sometimes that is so nice to have. So yeah, I actually like that.
Yeah, and I think now, if they do take a quarterback in the top 10, obviously they can't get a receiver there, but this is still a situation where at 36, there's hopefully going to be pass catchers available in this draft. So they still need a lot of work to do in that room, but even if you draft a quarterback first, there's still going to be potential options a little bit further down the draft.
They're absolutely.
Let's get to a little silver lining for the Jaguars here. According to Ian Rappaport, it sounds like Arik Armstead is closing in on a deal with the Jags where he will land with Trent Baalke, who drafted him in the first round in 2015. Right. So nice little reunion there 9 years later. I like this a lot. For as much as we've been shitting on the Jags over the last 2 weeks, the 2 spots that I've wanted more, it's more than 2 spots. The spot on defense I've wanted more from the Jaguars over the last couple of years is a third pass rushing option. It has never emerged. So now in defined passing situations with Ryan Nielsen now as your defensive coordinator, if you can trot out Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, and Arik Armstead as your 3 technique, you can get after some people.
No, that's great.
If you think stylistically, think back to what the Saints have been along their defensive line over the last few years, and then look at the way that Atlanta was built with Calais Campbell in the interior and then playing outside a little bit last year. They love these monster defensive ends. That's what Nielsen has preferred his entire time as a defensive line coach and defensive coordinator. Armstead fits exactly into that, and I think that he works very well with the pieces they already have.
Yeah, I know this is so funny. It's like, actually, I like this. After just doing everything I did.
Guys are capable of making decent moves. I just don't like the overall vision.
Yeah, no, but I do. Just everything you just laid out. His inside kind of versatility with what I think Walker's like best path will be on rushing downs is as an inside pass rusher. I actually love that with Armstead and Allen and all the games that they could potentially run, like, T's and ETs. I like that. And again, Darnell Savage is a little bit of an overpay, but I did like that as a buy lowish candidate because of what I think he could do. But also,
that is not a buy low. That is buy at a reasonable price.
It was buying at a reasonable price, but I actually want to see him in this defense
today, though.
Because, pardon?
Did you see what Darnell Savage said today?
No.
So he was talking about his role in Green Bay. And he said, I've been playing a lot of safety over the last couple of years, but I think I can play all over the place. So there is a chance that just to get your hopes up even further, that we see more Darnell Savage in the slot with Jacksonville. And you're going to buy into that so hard. I'm already looking forward to it.
Well, I already love Nielsen. Like a big fan, loved what he did last year. So it's like that's good to hear because I think that's his best role. Savage in the slot is kind of like a really athletic guy there. So maybe, just maybe. God, they're getting me back in. And then they decide Devin Duvernay because Jamal Agnew wasn't enough.
I love that they needed someone in the Jamal Agnew role. That was the reason they needed to go after Devin Duvernay.
That was a priority, not Josh Allen, not Calvin Ridley. Got to fill up that role of Jamal Agnew.
We'll see what happens with their secondary. We haven't talked about the Ronald Darby signing at all. I mean, he was a rotational piece for the Ravens. Yeah. I understand it as just like a low-cost dice roll. He's had some decent moments in the NFL. So can you just piece together the secondary with usable guys as you've had to donate more resources to the offense and potentially will have to use your first-round pick on offense, and you won't be able to kind of restock the cupboard on the back end. But I understand how they've gone about it, even if the Darnell Savage thing seems like a sticker price pay.
Yeah, and Nielsen covers up those guys pretty well. It's like, again, he does a good job on the back end. It's while at defensive line guys kind of just don't have that tie-in, like when they become D coordinators. He showed a pretty cool understanding of it all.
Well, for something to point out there is that Jerry Gray was there last year with him in Atlanta. And so Jerry Gray had been the defensive backs coach and passing game coordinator for the Packers for years. He was the DB's coach in Minnesota forever. So he came to be the passing game coordinator and I think like the assistant head coach for the Falcons last year. So I think that helps potentially have a guy with tons of experience taking care of the back end. I don't know what the Jags defensive coaching staff looks like.
Okay.
So just something to keep in mind.
No, it is. No, I'm definitely keeping an eye on the Jags this year, but the defense is almost more interesting to me than the offense. Also, the Jags on the offensive side, a guy that had
Chris Richard is there.
Oh, okay.
Chris Richard is there. That makes
definitely
sense.
Has some knowledge on the back end.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
But Nick Holes went from the Jags to he's the OC now with the Titans, so he knew Calvin Ridley as well. I was actually just thinking of that familiarity as well. So there's some little connection as well there. Some sexual AFC Southish.
Let's get to another defense. Man, that's a great transition by me. Let's get to another defensive line signing, mid-tier defensive line signing that I think is very easy to get excited about. The Lions get DJ Reader.
Love this.
And I absolutely love this. We were wondering what the moves up front would be for Detroit. And this is my bad. When we were talking about the Lions last week, I had forgotten that they signed Marcus Davenport to a very, very small deal, which, he's can't stay healthy. There's a reason he's available for $6 million, but it's still a dice roll we're taking on a really talented guy.
He's an impact player. Yeah.
When he's on the field, he can make some noise. So now you add a low cost, other contingency at edge, plus a guy like DJ Reader to drop next to Aleem McNeil. I love this. And apparently, according to Ian Rappaport, 2 years up to $27 million, only $9 million guaranteed, which this is a third contract run stuffing defensive tackle. So I understand that the price is probably not that high, but I would take a guy with DJ Reader's impact at this price every single day of the week.
Love this. No, this is even better than what I thought. And this is the type of guy they can drop in because of the other makeup of their defensive line. So I think this is a great fit. He's missed some time, but he's a needle mover. And that's the thing is like, yes, they're probably only going to have maybe 10 games, 12 games that Reader and Davenport will both be available. But it's like those could be at the end of the season. That could be the playoffs. And if you get hot, that could turn into a true strength. So I like this a lot. I think this is a great signing. The fit makes sense. The pay, sticker price makes sense, and the impact can make sense a lot too.
I like this. I like where the Lions have landed, and I think it aligns with the team they've been and the front office they've been since they got started. There's a little bit more urgency. There's a little bit more, let's push this, but they're not overdoing it. The Carlton Davis thing is a semi-aggressive move. This signing is a semi-aggressive move. So you're still operating within yourself while understanding we've really got a chance. If we hit on 3-4 of these moves this offseason, we've really got a chance. And I just have such an appreciation for how well Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, both of whom got contract extensions today, deservedly their ability to understand their own roster and really just understand the landscape of it, where they need to make moves. They've done such a good job of knowing who they are as a team over the last couple of years. And I think this offseason is another example of that already.
That's why I like this a lot, is because Reader and McNeil have a great complementary skill sets. McNeil is going to try and shoot gaps and try and get upfield and try and be a wrecker. Reader is a plugger. He's going to do a little bit of that, but he's eating stuff up, and that's what you want.
One of the best in the league at doing.
Yes,
I mean, his ability to eat space is fantastic.
You want those two guys, especially if you're going to play in a 4-down front like this. You need those two to kind of like complement each other. You need the classic 1 technique and the classic 3 technique. And Reader is the 1. He is the 0, the 1, the head up guy, the 1, the shaded guy, whatever you want to say. So I that's again is an understanding of roster makeup, not just going, I'm going to get the 86 overall guy. No, actually understand maybe that 83 overall fits better and has a booster effect on everybody else. Just using Madden and RPG terms because it actually works. It actually works sometimes when you think of it that way. It's like, so if you look 83 might matter for everybody else.
If you look at what they've done, going to get Carlton Davis, they re-signed Emmanuel Mosley to a short-term deal. Again, another guy struggled to stay healthy, but they've got him for essentially free. So if he manages to stay healthy, that's great. And then they got Amik Robertson as another just body in the secondary. So throwing bodies at the cornerback problem. You still have Melifonwu, who came on really strong at the end of last year, Kobe Joseph. And then you look at what they've done up front. The defense pretty much has like a starting 11 if you want there to be. So
there,
if you want to try to get some talent in the draft and you're banking on in-house development, that's really all you're looking at there. And then on offense, the only real hole that currently exists because of guys they've lost is what's happening at left guard. But that's something you could potentially do in the second, third round if you needed to do it. So the Lions are, in my opinion, already having a pretty decent offseason and are well positioned once again, which as somebody who is now rooting for a potentially relevant NFC North team is annoying to me.
Oh my God, they're all 4. But it's this is how you use free agency. You're supplementing your roster. You're complementing the pieces, the homegrown stars that you hopefully have. So it's
selectively being aggressive. Yes. I think it's okay to spend some money in this area of the calendar if you're doing it in the right way. And I think this is a good example of
that. But none of these cripple you. Like Carlton Davis would be the only one that's like, yeah, he's not going to play full season. He has yet to do it in his career. You know that. But that's the risk you have to take to get that type of level of player. They're trying to contend.
That's the only concern here because we've said that about every single guy.
Every single one. That's why these guys are available in the first place. Also, there's a great tie-in with health and free agency. like if you want a correlating factor of why guys are available, like, oh, why is Arik Armstead, why is Armstead, Teron Armstead available? Oh, the starting left tackle. Oh, I can figure out why. But no, I just, to me, this makes sense because they're trying to raise their ceiling. They nailed the draft. They got the stars on offense. Okay, we'll see what we have with Jameson Williams, but they have juice on offense. So, now we just have to get the complementary pieces. That's what these guys are. But if one of these guys does miss time, 5, 6, 7 games, it's not going to cripple our whole season. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to just supplement and complement everything else.
And they have shore up units, right? You're thinking about it as building units. And I think they've done a good job of that over the last couple of years where it's like, let's not think of a defensive line as 4 guys. Let's think of a defensive line as 7 guys. Let's think of a secondary as 7 guys. And as long as we have the requisite answers over the course of the year, that's what we need. You can argue that they haven't quite pulled that off yet with the way they've assembled those units, but I understand the thought process and what they're trying to do.
Agreed. Yes, I see the thoughtfulness behind it. I think is a good way to put it.
The Bengals lose DJ Reader, and they replaced DJ Reader by signing Sheldon Rankins. 2 years, $26 million. No guarantee numbers on that, and I don't know if that's an up to number, so just worth paying attention to. It actually might be less than that, which based on the Bengals history, not a knock. I think they're very smart in the way that they pay free agents, and they only go to certain levels. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being a little less than that. And the other little bit of news that I found interesting, Jordan Schultz reporting today that Tyre Tart is visiting the Bengals.
That is interesting.
Pairing Tyre Tart and Sheldon Rankins, again, you think about complementary skill sets. Tyre Tart is your space eater. Sheldon Rankins is that penetrator. You're essentially recreating the interior of the Texans line that they wanted to replace. But I still think that overall, that's a decent DJ Reader replacement plan.
No, that's a good one. And it's a good buy low. I mean, relative Tart's market should be bigger, but there's reasons it's not. But but no, I like this a lot. I like the Rankins signing originally, but then just dropping in Tart, and hopefully that they'd probably get him fairly cheap. I assume. I
you have to assume
that. Yeah, I really like that for what they need right now. Yeah, that shores up a lot on what they need on defense. Speaking
of buy lows, they also get Von Bell for the minimum because he had a $6 million guaranteed salary, I believe, with Carolina. And I like this. This is a lot of teams have done this over the years. This is a Patriot staple for a long time. Let the guy go sign for big money. When it doesn't work out on the shitty team, he comes back to us for nothing, and we get to just get the band back together. So the Bengals last year, and I appreciate them approaching it this way, safety was a problem. They gave up more explosive plays or at a higher rate than any defense in the NFL. And Duke Tobin and Lou Anarumo and everyone on that side said, we're not doing that again. So you go get Geno Stone, you go get Von Bell, you still have Dax Hill, and you still have, we got DJ Turner and, oh my goodness. I tried to do that all from memory and then couldn't do it. Who's the other? Cam Taylor-Britt. Goodness gracious. Cam Taylor-Britt is the other outside corner spot, and you still have Mike Hilton. So this secondary, again, you talk about having options and contingencies. That's exactly what they have here now. So getting Von Bell for nothing and just dropping him back into this defense along with Geno Stone, I understand what the Bengals are trying to do, and I think they position themselves very well on that side of the ball.
You can't get Jesse Bates back, but you can at least get most of the communication back on the back end. And that's what crippled them last year. So this is, yes, I understand why they went with that. Just like you said, never again. Just no, we're not dealing with that ever again, because that's what when you watch that defense and watching them specifically against oh my God, the Texans and it was just over routes and post routes, and it was just all defensive back communication because Lou Anarumo puts a lot on his safeties. So I think this is just to lift the floor, make sure again that the bottom can't fall out on them.
And this gives you a chance of who's our best three guys. You know, if we want to play Dax Hill in a role where he's maybe a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage and dime packages, you need three safeties at this point. I think most of the best defenses in the NFL have three workable safeties. And now when you're healthy, that's exactly what you have. And to get Von Bell for essentially nothing, that is a pretty big win here for the Bengals. Yes. The Bengals get all those guys. They lose Jonah Williams, who goes to Arizona on a 3-year, $30 million deal with $20 million guaranteed. I think this is totally fine for Arizona. Yeah. Jonah Williams has had his issues, but if you look at the price range that this lands in, this is essentially right in line with the deals that Andre Dillard got last year, Andrew Wiley, the Trey Pipkins extension. It's a little bit more guaranteed money than that. But I think if you're just looking for a plug and play tackle that gives you flexibility to add whatever you want in the draft, this solves that for the Cardinals after they decided to move on from DJ Humphries.
I feel like 12 million is like once you get above 12 million a year, that's kind of like the good starting tier. You know, this is what, 10 mil a year. Yeah. That's what he is. He's a starting tackle, but he's above that kind of, I would say he's lower tier. I think he's a starting tackle, like fine. And again, they're a team that can withstand this, but it doesn't mean they're done. They can draft another guy that they can develop down the road. Like that's the thing. They can now again, you're not making it where it's like, well, we have to shore that up somewhere in the draft.
And that's what they had to do. I think they wanted to make sure that they could do whatever they wanted in the top 10 or in the first couple of rounds, where you're not looking at that glaring hole at one of your tackle spots and saying, that's what we have to do. Yeah. And that's exactly what this allows. Apparently, Paris Johnson is going to move over to left tackle. They're going to slot Jonah Williams in on the right. And what this means, I think pretty much guaranteed, Marvin Harrison Jr., you are an Arizona Cardinal.
Yeah, or just some pass catcher some movement or a pass catcher. That's I'm a willing better on that. But the Paris Johnson on the left side though, totally fine. Like Paris Johnson should have been in Rookie of the Year contention if he wasn't in the same season as CJ Stroud and Puka Nacua. So yeah, that whole like, offensive lineman could be a Rookie of the Year kind of argument was going to happen this season.
I think he had some moments in the middle of the season where he hit a little bit of a rookie wall. There was some ups and downs, but the flashes were very encouraging.
The Will Anderson game against Houston was kind of a bounce back game for him, and that's when he kind of really stepped back up. But no, I think he is. Long story short, what I'm saying is I think he could be a very good left tackle. So I'm comfortable with this move. He has length, athleticism. He's great in the run game, and he's a good pass protector. And he plays with a real fun attitude. Like you could tell he's a tone setter for the room. So it's big Paris Johnson fan over here.
I think that's why they were as willing as they were to go back up and get him. Because if you remember, the Cardinals moved down out of the top 10 in last year's draft and then moved back up to go get Paris Johnson. And when you're in this situation, it's similar to Houston. Right. I think one of the reasons that Houston was so willing to do what they did for Will Anderson is when you're still, let's call Houston stage 2, and let's say the Cardinals are still in stage 1. When you're in those early stages, you want to take swings on high football character guys. Like that's what you're building your foundation with. Will Anderson is the definition of that. And everything about Paris Johnson in the draft process, I think, told the Cardinals, we're willing to do this. Like it's a premium player and it's a premium person as we try to figure out what we are as an organization. So, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. potentially gives you the same sort of approach where this guy's going to be a pro from day one. So you've got 2 top 10 picks at premium positions on offense, theoretically, that I think helps set the foundation of where you want to go as a team. Yeah.
Especially, they seem to be committed to Kyler, which I think I'm really interested to see him with a full year in that offense and everything. They feel like I know we're about to get to one. Cardinals just did a whole bunch of singles and doubles kind of moves, but it's funny. Again, they put their pro scouting staff to work. But I want to see again, how these guys fill out and how they're going to use them all, because that's interesting to me, because everything the Cardinals do right now are kind of interesting to me, because who's in charge.
What do you think of the other moves that they've made? Because I'm very familiar with the Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols experience.
Oh, that's
a life that I've lived. And they gave both of those guys pretty decent contracts. Justin Jones, 3 years, 31 with $25 million guaranteed. Bilal Nichols, 3 for 21 with $12 million guaranteed. That's a lot of money for guys who aren't really needle movers on the interior defensive line.
The rotational guys, but I want to know why why them? They could splurge on other spots, but why them? Obviously they identified those guys, because even with how they sign guys, it's from everywhere. It's not like, oh, this guy was a former Patriot. Oh, this guy was a former Titan. This guy was a former Eagle. Some former Eagles, don't get me wrong, because of Gannon. But it's just that it's interesting to me of who they identify. Okay, Sean Murphy Bunting. Why Sean Murphy Bunting? Why are you identifying him as the corner that you want to go after, as opposed to this guy or this guy or that guy? So I don't know. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying the Cardinals are one of those teams that they do something. I'm like, why'd you do that? And
so my take on the interior defensive linemen, I wanted to pull this up while you were talking. I want to tell you the names of the 3 interior defensive linemen who led the Cardinals in snaps last year.
Oh my God, it's hilarious.
Dante Stills, who I truly did not know who that was before just seeing that name. Jonathan Ledbetter. I know who that was by other times where I've looked at the Cardinals depth chart and done this. That's why I know who that is. And then the third guy, Kevin Strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the 3 interior defensive linemen on the Cardinals. And we'll throw Roy Lopez in there just for fun. Those are the 4 guys on the interior of the defensive line for Arizona last year that got at least 395 snaps. So workable defensive line play at any cost, I think, might be your answer when you're trying to figure out why those guys.
And it's right. Just bodies. But you saw Dennis Gardick's breakout season, just unbelievably hilarious player. But they do interesting stuff. It was not a good defense. I want to assure everybody, it was
they finished dead last in pretty much every single metric.
Everything. And so, but they just tried stuff. And again, it was pretty fun, but it was but honestly, the only player that looked like a plus player was Budda Baker. Kaiser White looked pretty damn good when he was healthy, but man, it's just, they need bodies. They need needle movers and they need bodies. That's a great rebuild project that they took over.
Sticking with the Cardinals, I think my favorite move of the last 24 hours, just because I love player for player trades. They're my favorite thing that can ever happen. The Cardinals send Rondale Moore to the Falcons for Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, sure.
So the Cardinals get a backup quarterback for the next 2 years at cost. And if you look at the backup quarterback market, these guys are getting paid. Joe Flacco got a decent chunk of change. I mean, a lot of these guys are really getting sizable contracts because I think that teams looked at what happened last year and said, we need a workable backup quarterback. Like if you don't have one, you're in trouble. You think about what Jameis got paid. So getting Ridder for what they did, I can understand that. They send Rondale Moore to Atlanta. And now you think about the skill position talent in Atlanta. You got Rondale Moore, Darnell Mooney, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan with Kirk Cousins and that offensive line. It's very easy to talk yourself into what the Falcons offense can look like because the pieces all fit. They all make sense with one another. And I actually think that's pretty exciting.
I think they still need one more outside receiver. I think Mooney's a slot only guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Ron, yeah, he can't win outside on press.
Well, I don't think they're going to use him that way. So I think that might be a problem.
Yeah, well, and then Rondale Moore's a running back. I mean, if anyone watched the Cardinals last year, they didn't. He was a running back. So the
Rondale Moore part of this does not excite you.
He's Cordell Patterson in that offense.
Okay. All right.
I had a joke about it. Yeah, no, it's not a receiver. It's a running back who does some receiver things. I like Rondale Moore. I do. I think he's super explosive. He was good in that role. And that's another thing why I like what Drew Petzing was doing in Arizona. I just thought this was oh, that's interesting. Not more like, oh shit. Having said that, I do think the Falcons offense is going to be super interesting, of course, with the Kirk Cousins stuff, the O-line, the receivers that they have, or pass catchers, I should say. I still want to see one more guy. I think they need one more outside receiver. And I think they have the means to get one. But yeah, that's I still think they're a piece away.
I completely understand that. You certainly watched more Arizona Cardinals offense than anyone else in America last year. So I'm going to default to you on the Rondale Moore.
Did wind the clock on it. Yeah.
On the Rondale
Moore touchdown.
Rondale Moore scouting report. But so you think at $13 million a year that Mooney's a slot only guy for them?
Well, I don't know for them, but I'm saying what his ideal role is going to be. I would say if I were a pro scout, I'd be like, well, this guy can only work from the slot. When he goes from the outside, he can't be pressed consistently and he's short on his routes. Shanahan offenses are really, really sticklers on beating press and getting to your route landmarks. So, but I do think Mooney has like a role, like he's good at certain things. I just think it has to be specific. I picture him best used as Christian Kirk is used. Again, slot, vertical kind of slot guy. Hollywood Brown's another guy like that. So there's not that perfect fit that I see with it. Also, he's not a great blocker either, so that's another kind of limitation there. So that one hasn't moved me as much as other people. I don't think yeah.
Again, I'm defaulting to you on that as somebody who watched a lot of the Arizona Cardinals last year. My conclusion here is I feel like Rondale Moore is going to run 10 miles a game just on jet motion.
Yeah, right. Yes. He's Powell, Brandon Powell.
He's just going to be running the entire game. Just every single play, he's going to be running. That seems to be the Rondale Moore role within this offense, just on a broad level.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah, he's not Jaquiz Rogers. Or Jaquiz's brother, if I forgot.
Pretty big move here for the Dolphins. Kendall Fuller goes to Miami, 2 years, $16.5 million. If you look at what the Dolphins have done this offseason, I understand their approach to this. They've had to get some discounts and they've had to look in a certain aisle, but they've filled a lot of holes. So they needed a number 2 corner after losing Xavier Howard. So getting Kendall Fuller for $8.5 million a year, I think is pretty solid. He's getting a little bit older. Another third contract guy. I can understand where the price tag wasn't that high. But if you're looking at him as your other outside corner, you go get Jordan Poyer, you go get Jordan Brooks, Aaron Brewer, same kind of deal. They've had to fill a lot of holes, but I think they've done a decent job of at least getting workable players in most of those spots, even if they've had to skimp a little bit.
Yeah, the reconfiguring of the Dolphins has been interesting because they have to. It's always interesting when the desperate teams or desperate people have to do some things and they feel desperate, going like, "Well, we have to reconfigure this." I like this. It's best of what they could do. I mean, how else are they going to shore up these positions? They can't go into the season with nobody, so it's like,
he was arguably like the top corner left on the market.
Yeah, he's a starter level corner. Like they couldn't get that with the resources that they have right now. So and again, that was like the Aaron Brewer contract. It was like, hey, that works for them. Like, yeah, they are a specific team and they have specific ways that they have to fill all this. I actually think they're doing a decent job with
I think so too.
I really do. Like the Jordan Brooks thing is like, I still think that's one of the, I wouldn't say steal. I hate saying steal free agency. These guys are always going to be overpaid, but it's just like, I don't know. That's a great kind of buy medium. I think bet the Jonnu Smith thing makes sense for what they do on offense. It's just, yeah, for where they're at. Jordan Poyer, 1-year deal. We need it. We need a starting.
It was always going to be tough because they were always going to have to operate on the margins with where they were financially. Yes. And I think when you consider those limitations, I understand and appreciate what they've tried to do.
Use the term threading the needle. They are right now, for where they're at, doing the best they can to thread that needle. I commend what the Dolphins are trying to do to like kind of keep this team afloat.
One that just happened before we started recording, I guess after we started recording, Sam Howell to the Seattle Seahawks. Sam Howell goes to Seattle. The Seahawks get Sam Howell, a 4th and a 6th. Washington gets a 3rd and a 5th. I'm not doing that math. It seems like the Seahawks didn't give up a lot to get Sam Howell, if I'm doing some back of the napkin draft chart math when you take all those picks into account.
Yeah, not too much. Yeah, just swap up. Nobody won the 2022 quarterback debate, the quarterback draft debate. Nobody won. I just want to make sure everyone knows that nobody won. Because there's no freaking Purdy guy. Nobody was a Purdy guy.
Yeah.
Nobody won. I'm calling my Ridder takes a win.
And Desmond Ridder sent to the NFC West on the same day. It's just a concession from those two teams.
And Russell Wilson got brought in, into Pittsburgh. And so, it's Matt Corral, I think, is in the UFL now. Nobody won. Nobody won. So
but we all knew that, right? We all knew going in that it was going to be a disaster. And guess what? It ended up being a disaster.
How many times could I say none of these guys have a first round grade? None of these guys have a first round grade. None of these guys have a first round grade. You love Desmond Ridder. Okay. So yeah, sure. All right. I'm a Ridder guy now.
Want to zoom out a little bit now that we've kind of gotten toward not the end, but as most of these signings near the top of the market have happened. Let's zoom out and just talk about some big picture stuff we liked or didn't like as on day 4 of free agency here. So if you're zooming out a little bit, which team approaches have you liked here over the first 4 days?
I don't want to steal your thunder because you are so good. You always share your notes and I never share mine. So I because the first one, I agree with your first one. So I'll add on to that. So I'll go with the Patriots, actually, of all teams. I
almost threw them on there as well.
Okay. I actually like how they have kind of shored up and stabilized just everything. No matter what they do with the quarterback situation, if they go with Jacoby Brissett or if they go with a young quarterback, I like where they're set up. It feels like the McDermott Bean Bills a little bit, even if most of these guys are retaining their own guys. But just a lot of B minuses around here. They retain everyone. Everybody's workable. There's nobody they're truly committed to. The defense has a fun, the defense is going to be a good unit. If they're elite, not sure, but good. Remember, they're getting Christian Gonzalez back. So I don't know. I'm like, no matter how they kind of goes from here, now they can drop in a player with pedigree and drop in real needle movers, real building blocks that this new regime can kind of go from there. So they've kind of been dealt their hand. I kind of like that they stood pat with a lot of it, and a lot of puns here, but they stood pat and actually I like that. I really do.
So let's talk about this, because I think you contrast this with something, not to keep beating a dead horse, but contrast this to maybe what the 2021 Jaguars did when they were flush with all that money. And you go out and spend at not the top of the market, but you pay sticker prices for Rayshon Jenkins, Darius Williams, Roy Robertson Harris, all those guys.
It was used products, but paying new prices. That's what they did.
And the Patriots have not done that. Despite having the most cap space in the NFL right there with Washington, they've been pretty measured in the deals that they've handed out. The only big money contract that they signed was Mike Onwenu, and you could argue that he deserved that contract and probably should have been given it last offseason. Yes. So the fact that that is the big move that they made financially, and for the most part, other than that, they've been operating on the margins and just trying to spend correctly. I'm totally fine with the way that they've approached this. Not overpaying on a receiver, I think, is not the worst thing in the world if you're New England at the spot. And now as you get into the second wave, there's a chance that they can get a couple workable pieces from that pool, whether it's Mike Williams or somebody else.
Yeah. And even like the Onwenu thing, like his guard tackle versatility is great if you're trying to rebuild an offensive line, because now we're not stripped. Oh, we need a right tackle. We need a left tackle. We need you don't want to need anything. You want to want the thing to fill the gap and everything. But now you can slot him in. Okay, well, we really like this guard in the second round. All right, well, Onwenu can be a tackle now. all right, boom, boom, boom. We can work from there. Now we can build our best 5. So like just even that, committing to a guy that doesn't really miss time, has positional flexibility. That's the guys you want to build around. And I think that they have done a nice job of just like committing to those types of players, even if they
Yeah.
are mostly their own.
And if you think about where Elliott Wolf comes from, I mean, not seeing
Um,
them make a lot of splashy moves in
Oh
free
my
agency
goodness.
makes a lot of sense when you think about the history of the
Packers.
Green Bay Packers.
Yes, Packers all the way. It's such a funny merger of ideals. It really is. If like football kind of history, like kind of behind the scenes history, it's a very funny thing what's going on in New England. This kind of thinking two totally different trees kind of merging in New England right now. It's
And that
very
was why I was
fascinating.
so intrigued by them coming into the year, just because we didn't know what their values were going to
At
be.
all.
Didn't know how they were going to approach all this stuff. So every little data point we get on what this version of the Patriots is,
Yeah,
I'm interested in that. And I think
I am
that
too.
we've learned a decent amount, even over these first few days, about how they want to approach free agency specifically.
We're 2 months in, but it's been a good 2 months. As quote unquote boring as it has been, I actually have liked the boringness.
It's difficult 4 days in to really make sweeping declarations about what you did or didn't like. There are going to be teams that come in the second wave and make some good signings. The Lions hadn't done much before they signed DJ Reader. And I don't want to be one of those guys where you see the team that spent a lot of money and was aggressive and be like, yeah, that was good. But for me specifically, I think where those two things converge, aggressiveness and I like the path that they're on, is what the Houston Texans have done over the first few days.
Yeah.
Because I like a team that understands where they are and what they need to do. The Texans justifiably, I think, see themselves as Super Bowl contenders. Right now, I think they are looking at the league and the landscape and saying, we can do this. We've got the guy already. We're in a position where if things go right for us, we can compete against anybody in the AFC. That is what the Danielle Hunter signing says to me, that over the next 2 years, we've got a shot at this thing. And with the way that I see CJ Stroud and what they are offensively, I don't think that is wrong. I think that's actually the right way to think about what you can be over the next 2 seasons. So you look at what they did with Hunter, Shire, Danico Autry. I mean, all these guys, and the way they've rebuilt their defensive front, and then what they're potentially going to have on offense with all those guys coming back. I think this was the right way to approach it, even if it was a little bit aggressive pretty quickly when you consider how not long this team has been relevant.
When the kind of season ended and really kind of just like looking at what the Texans roster and of course, the ascent of Stroud just being, oh, shoot, you're already the ceiling that I thought you could be right away, which is really exciting. Even if he doesn't improve, it's like, well, you're still like a top 8 quarterback. So we're good here.
Yeah.
And then we're good. And then, okay, Nico Collins, the ascent of Nico Collins into what I think we both say a top 10 receiver. I mean, truly top 10, top 12. I'll just say, okay, with top 10, 12, top 12 in receiver, a bona fide X receiver, what everybody wants that you can isolate. They have a top tier left tackle. They have a pass rusher or a means to a pass rush. They have a corner in Derek Stingley, who I think at the end of last year was truly playing really good football. So they have all the blue chip things that you want, what we call the most premium positions. They have most of them that are very young too. Now's the time to go. That's when you have all that in place, push. You have the things everyone else chases. Go. Like we have a window right now, especially on these cheap deals for a lot of these guys. So leaving at that and going into these moves. All right, Danielle Hunter is a great compliment to Will Anderson. Couldn't for 2 edges, just a great complementary skill set. Like as far as a more bendy knuckleball pitcher with a true fastball pitcher right at you. Okay, now we got these 2 guys that can work off each other.
It's beautiful. The synchronicity of it with Will
Great.
Anderson bringing the physicality on the left side and Danielle Hunter being that speed guy on the other side is perfect.
It's a classic speed guy, weak defensive end, and a classic strong side defensive end. Like again, sometimes teams just go, oh, this is the 92 overall guy, sign him, without thinking anything about the makeup of the teams. We've seen a lot of this actually in the NBA going on. And people on team building going like, oh, okay, actually, if we get these 2 guys with these complementary skill sets, we get a boost out of it, as opposed to just going for the guy that's better overall. So I think that's why I like it. Danico Autry, everybody loves Danico Autry. His inside-outside versatility. He's going into another 4-down defense. Perfect for him. Another fit that makes sense. It's not just getting that guy. Azeez Al-Shaair, love with the linebacker. Like love having a linebacker. That's their biggest weakness. And now that you're getting a guy that isn't the sexiest player, but he shores up what you're so weak at against the run, stuff happening over the middle. The trade for Joe Mixon, was just like, that's just a nice little single little bit of a needle mover, I actually think, because now you're getting talent and you didn't have to do much to get it. And you can add to that position in the draft. I don't know. They just set themselves up for, again, like I think how you put it, being aggressive, but also just like staying within yourself. And I think they just they've really nailed it too. So like they were my 1A answer too. I saw that you had them too, because I was like, yeah, let's go, baby. Because I think the Texans so far have just nailed this 4 days, 1 month, 2 months, whatever you want to say.
I've always thought that in this process, Hunter was just the sort of edge that you really can't come across in free agency. And if you're a team that has a window that's maybe a year or two long for a 30-year-old pass rusher, that was the right. And I think the Texans window is longer than that. But if you look at the financial situation that they're in, they know that they're going to have cheap guys at those positions. Nico Collins is, even if he gets an extension this offseason, he's going to be cheap in 2025. CJ Stroud's going to be cheap till 2027. So you've got a chance right now to really spend on a guy who can disrupt games in ways that free agent edge rushers just typically don't.
He's a 12 sack guy.
He's a 12 sack guy. And if you look at what he's potentially going to be able to do on a per snap basis, over the next couple of years, because he has to play a little bit less as he's getting older, I think it makes a ton of sense. So it is very easy for me to get excited about what they have done here over the past few days. I already know that I'm going to have to like pump the brakes because it's very, very easy to get ahead of yourself when you think about how good he was last year.
And just the fit, what DeMeco Ryans gets out of those guys, how he uses the defensive line. That's what's I think is great too. Because you said like he can use it as 75% snap role. He doesn't have to be a 90% snap kind of guy. And again, you're turning into they have 2 first rounders. Or I'm sorry, they have the first rounder and at the back of the draft. Sorry, I mixed up the teams. But using that first,
they still have a first rounder, even if they traded
the Texans, Browns, and Cardinals for me are like they have this shell game of draft picks in my brain that I'm trying to. No, they had the first round at the end, and why I'm saying that it's in the 20s is that where they're set up is perfect for what they could potentially need if they want to add another freaking defensive lineman. That's right in that kind of range. If they want to add a second corner. If they want, Cooper DeJean is there. Another guy I'm just going to keep bringing up because he can slot into so many different spots. They're set up.
They also have an extra 3rd round pick. Excuse me. They have a 3rd round pick despite trading theirs to Arizona. They got an extra 3rd rounder from Philly. So they still have a full complement of draft picks, which I think is worth pointing out when you consider the holes that they still need.
It's easy to get excited about them.
It very much is. Even the Danico Autry thing. Okay. Danico Autry is 34 years old. He's not going to be attractive to a lot of other teams in different positions. Danico Autry staying in Tennessee would not make sense. Danico Autry on this team, 1, based on what you can do over the next 2 seasons. 2, you put Danico Autry on the edge on early downs, let Danielle Hunter sit his ass on the bench on 1st and 10, save his body, and then come in on 2nd and 9 and let him go to work. Like it just makes total sense when you think about it in totality with that position group and how they've started to put it together.
You have to look at this as minutes, like in basketball. You overlap these guys and get it to work. Some guys are going to take more, some guys are going to take less, but that's how these guys use snaps, and that's how these guys, particularly the Texans, how they use these guys on snaps. So yeah, again, the pitch count makes a lot of sense.
Other team I wanted to mention was the Bengals, but we've already really talked about them. I just appreciate the way that they've handled this. I think they've made a lot of shrewd moves over the last few weeks. Who was your next one?
I already knocked off the Patriots, the Rams, just because of the beef. We've already talked more and more about them, but just the beef. Kevin Dotson bringing him back, Jonah Jackson.
All right, let's
so much talent.
Let's have a measured conversation about this. I understand the final product is very fun and exciting.
Beef.
You don't have any issue with the price tag of spending a collective $35 million on guards?
No, because who else they have out there? Just they got because Audric, they have a tender on him. So just the makeup of the entire, yes, Alaric. Oh, we'll just say Audric, Alaric, and also just like Avila is on a rookie contract. So again, if you're looking at the 5 offensive linemen, that actually does. It's an easier pill to swallow for me.
That's
not
fair.
What the Panthers did.
For me, it's more about the not spending resources on defense and the holes that still exist on defense when you're shopping at the top of the market on guards. Was there a chance you could have filled that for half the price and pumped a little bit more of that money back onto the defense? I'm mostly playing devil's advocate here because I'm also excited about it, but I wonder if there was maybe a smarter way to go about the resources.
I think they're shopping in the bargain bin aisle on defense. I think that's how they're going about it. So I suppose that these guys are more as the middle tier aisle. I think that's what they're going to go about it. And they have
I honestly don't hate that as a plan. Like, let's coming into the season and saying we're going to have the best offense in the league. We're going to have a top 3 offense. That's the goal. And if we get to mediocre on defense, that's enough for us. I don't hate that as an approach.
And just go like wheel out Aaron Donald like Hannibal Lecter in the playoffs and just like, all right, here we go.
First time, man.
I know. Here we go. All right, go. Yeah. But, and again, danger, Will Robinson, but they can go, if the young guys, the young guys just ascend a little bit, the Byron Youngs, the Kobe Turners just ascend a little bit. That's, also can bet on that, some projection from there, even if they did play their asses off as rookies.
So I think this is telling though. What Jordan Rodriguez said yesterday is that they weren't intending to tender Michael Hoyt. That was not the original plan. They ended up doing it, I think, because there wasn't a path to edge rushers.
Like, oh shit.
Class. So that's my only concern, is that even after bringing in Darius Williams, there's still a lot of questions on the back end. And at some point you need another edge rusher. So now you put yourself in a position where if you can't get a guy in the second wave of free agency, and I'm deeply aware of which edge rushers are still available. We'll get to that in a minute. You're putting yourself in a spot where you really need to come away with one early in the draft for this entire plan to make sense. That's my only concern.
No, I get it. It's just that I love when teams add to a strength and just fully,
you really do,
leaning into it, man. And like, it's my favorite. It really is. Especially how they are going to wield it. It's not going for naught.
It's easy to see the plan based on who they were last year, and I think that's why it's easy to get excited about.
It's one of these that I want to say now because I'll forget about it for the next 5 months, and then once preseason starts, I'll go, oh yeah, I'm excited about this. Okay, Rams, oh cool, playoffs. Yeah, that's I just want to put a pin in it for now.
My next one here, I like what the Minnesota Vikings have done. I just think that the guys that they've signed for the prices that they've signed, it all makes sense to me. Like going and getting a little bit younger with Grenard, I think he's a really good player. I think that he's the exact type of guy you want to add in free agency. 26 years old, ascending. I think all the underlying metrics would tell you what sort of season he had last year. We talked about the Van Ginkel thing for 2 weeks. I mean, they paid for him, right? I mean, it's real money to $10 million a year, $14 million guaranteed. But stylistically, I like how that fits. And then going to get Aaron Jones. I was talking to Alec Lewis this morning, who covers the Vikings for us. He does a fantastic job. If you're a Vikings fan and you aren't in tune with the work that Alex is doing, highly recommend going to check that out. But what the Vikings had to do over the last few years, where you're trying to balance this being competitive with resetting everything at the same time, it's just not easy to pull off. And I actually think they've done an okay job, because what they did for the first 2 years, especially year one, is you earn equity in the building, right? There's buy-in. There's a level of excitement. And I don't want to put too much stock in this, but you look at the NFLPA report card and the way that guys feel about playing for the Vikings, like there's like a real level of excitement, I think, within that building among the players. Yeah. And so you've built that while maintaining the flexibility that you want to in the post Kirk Cousins era. You still need a quarterback plan moving forward. You always knew that was going to be the case, but I actually like how they've navigated the waters here over the last couple off seasons in a way that I think a lot of other teams might have screwed up because they wanted to go too far one way or the other.
Yeah, I think that's really the last year. That's kind of how we've even talked about the Vikings. Like they're trying to straddle it. It's hard.
Competitive rebuild. We've said it a million times.
It is hard to try to do both at the same time, to just go like, all right, win game. Okay, are we winning? Do we push? No, we'll rein back. Oh, he popped his Achilles. All right, we're okay. All right, rein it back. Like that, but still without ruining the culture. Like you said, there's a lot of human capital like that. There's only so much like morale that you can use, like so much that, okay, some goodwill that you can burn with all these things if you want to manage all this. So it's hard. I can't believe the disrespect to, the long-term plan of Sam Darnold as your starting quarterback. I love that.
Did you see what Kwesi said today? So Kwesi Gofamenta came out today when he was being asked about it, and he says, we don't need a quarterback in the draft. Now we can do it either way because we have Sam Darnold. I don't know how much I buy that, but
it's a good answer. I like that.
He's trying to pump down the price of that 8th overall pick that he wants to get from Atlanta.
I watched Week 18, Sam Darnold against the Rams.
God, you are a sick man. There.
Just had to make sure I wasn't out of line.
Walk me through this. Where like it was like 8 p.m. last night, and you'd put Jack to bed, and it's just like, you know what? This is it. I'm gonna spend my time tonight just queuing up Week 18 Sam Darnold tape.
So we saw Dune 2 yesterday.
Okay,
phenomenal, 10 out of 10. Oh man, some
Sam Darnold, Listan Al-Gaib.
So meeting. So I Do Not Disturb mode has just been also a godsend. Like discovering that. And I come out of the movie theater, see the Calvin Ridley news, and I was like, oh, shoot. Like, oh, man. All right, cool. So I had to grasp my head around that. Get home, and I was like, all right, I want to watch some film. I'm tired of watching some crappy guards, some round 4 guards. I'm tired of watching college football.
You wanted to watch some real good football, so it was time to queue up the Sam Darnold tape.
Hey, most of the starters were out there for the 49ers, so we got to see some realism there. There were some real Sam Darnold moments, good and bad. There's some real creation with him. He can throw to the left. He can make some plays. He can really, he threw some guys open on some kind of tightly contested ones. And then you just have some like, what are you doing? Oh, no. Yes moments with him. But it was the most kind of controlled I've ever seen him. Like, but it's a low bar. But it really was. So it was encouraging to see a lot of the strengths, and you could see that he mitigated like when he was about to take a sack because he bailed out of the pocket and it was in the red zone. He throws the ball like 10 yards out of bounds, and you could tell, I'm sure on the sidelines, like Greasy and Kyle Shanahan were just like, yes, we got through to him. He didn't try to make something bad, like a bad play worse. So there's a lot to like. There's a reason he went for 10 million. I want to say that to people. There was a market for Sam Darnold. It's not just me. I'm not just the only
I think the Broncos were also involved. If
I'm
you're
the only guy that sees this.
If you were going to semi-punt on the position, I think that Sam Darnold was at least a mildly intriguing option. And I think multiple teams landed on that this offseason. All that being said,
he's a dice roll. It's a craps table roll. That's what it is.
Right now, it is 4:10 p.m. Central Time on March 14th. We are not going to talk about Sam Darnold again on the show until the draft. Until the draft. If they don't draft anyone and they're rolling with Sam Darnold, we can queue up the Sam Darnold conversations.
I pinky swear to every listener, everyone right now, I'm done talking about him. Okay, I'm done. I'm done.
6 weeks moratorium on the Sam Darnold conversation until the draft.
I'm done. I got my takes off. I think he's gonna. If he does play, I think he will surprise some people with some of his talent, but he'll still have some bonehead decisions, and I can't quit him. But yes, pinky swear. That's it for me.
Last team for you. Whose plan you've liked over the last couple of days?
We kind of touched on them. Was the Lions. I like, and that was before the DJ Reader news, and then I got to add that bullet point. But all these fine signings, they make sense. The Glasgow signing even makes sense. That's a nice, solid starter. He knows the offense. He knows what they're doing. Like that. The Davis swing, the Davenport swing. I like what they're doing. I also kind of like a little ... on the Chargers, just because it's hilarious. They finally answered the roster holes that have been there for like 3 years. They got a running or short yardage running back in Gus Edwards. He's going to be more than that. Thank God for my dynasty teams. And then 2 real tight ends in Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst. Like guys that actually can like do a little blocking and like do a little something. Like, yeah, they said no more. Harbaugh watched that. And then he was just like, yeah, I see what you guys saw too. That wasn't going well.
So we were going to talk about this a little bit later, but we might as well talk about it now. News came out right before we started recording that Joey Bosa had restructured his deal. So I was always wondering what was going to happen with the Chargers. Which direction were they going to go? Were they going to move on from? So they had 4 high-priced guys, right? Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. Yes. What were the fates of those 4 guys going to be? My thought for most of this is that it was going to be one edge rusher gone and Mike Williams gone.
Yep.
The fact that they didn't do that and they're bringing back both edge rushers, and I assume Keenan Allen will be on an extension this year, it shouldn't be that surprising when you consider the Jim Harbaugh part of this. They were never going to tear this down. Even if that might have been the right move to nuke this a little bit and eat your medicine in a single year, they decided not to do that. And I understand it with him now being in charge. And if you listen to what Joe Horitz said at the Combine, their new general manager, I think he was on board with that approach as well. My big question here, how much are you leveraging your financial situation in 25, 26 by doing this? When you're moving this money around, are you going to be able to do it in a way that doesn't hamstring you in order to stay competitive in 2025? Or would it have been better just to bite the bullet with a couple of these guys and say, we're going to hit the hard reset? Because there's always a price to be paid. Restructuring this doesn't mean you just get to wipe the money away. At least I don't think it will. You're probably just pushing it a little bit further down.
Isn't that how credit cards work?
That's again, you talk about me in my mid-20s. It's exactly how I thought credit cards worked. But if you look at the way that they've handled this, is it going to get to a point where if you can push out the money a little bit and you're willing to borrow from Herbert's contract over the next few years, can you dismount from this in the right way? And I think that now becomes the challenge. But they've sent a message this week saying we are not starting over. Like, we're going to try to be at least competitive in the short term.
Yeah. It shouldn't be shocking. Like, I'm not. No, it shouldn't. And this is another thing. I mean, you see this in a lot of sports when the coach is the final decision maker or de facto final decision maker. A lot of them don't think about 2 years from now. A lot of them don't think about 2 months from now. A lot of them really like to see, like, oh, you're telling me I have to play another rookie or another this guy or another that guy, and instead of this star, this Bosa, this Mac. Mac was still productive last year.
He was very productive last year. He was much more productive last year than he was 2 years ago.
And it's not like he's fully dropped off. I kind of wanted to see the mercenary career of Khalil Mack. I was really excited to see that kind of high end one year deal with him. So we haven't gotten that fully, but this shouldn't be shocking. What they do with the draft pick is so fascinating to me because of whether they just, well, hey, we're taking a guy or move back or do that. Seeing this type of move, to me, it feels like they just stand pat, take a guy. Like,
that was one of my thoughts as well, is that everyone thought they were just going to trade down. But if this is the timeline and this is the level of aggressiveness, I've said the word urgency 10,000 times on the show over the last 72 hours. So I'm trying not to. The level of motivation they feel to be good in the short term. Does this mean that trade down that everyone's expecting is not going to happen? The only reason that makes me sad is that all I care about right now is which receivers are available in the top 10. So
Doomsday looks so good. I'm telling you, man.
I'm
just going to keep doing this every show.
Last team I wanted to mention, I'm interested in what Washington has done. I just think that they had all that ocean of cap space. I understand how they've used it. Dorrance Armstrong on that reasonable deal, signing 2 starters along the offensive line. I'm curious what they do at left tackle. If they're going to draft a quarterback in the top 2 and he's going to start right away, I'd be a little bit antsy about what that position specifically looks like. But otherwise, even Bobby Wagner on that 1-year deal, it's like, all right, you're year 1 of a new regime, whatever. Like, I understand what they've tried to do. Jeremy Chin, just as a buy low within that Dan Campbell, within that Dan Quinn defense. So
like him in that defense.
Yeah,
because he'll be in the curse role. And I like it in that defense. Yes.
Let's get to the other side of this.
I was going to say, do you know with Washington, do you know the opening scene of Blade? When it's just,
no.
Have you ever seen Blade?
I don't know. I think I've ever seen Blade in its totality. I'm not sure if I've ever seen
before
the whole
its time.
thing.
Very much of its time and very much before its time, but the same thing because it was a superhero movie.
Because I'm a big 90s. Wesley Snipes guy. I've seen Demolition Man like 47
You're a big
times.
Wesley Snipes guy. Actually, that was not the words I expected. Are you major?
I've just seen a lot of those 80s and 90s action movies more than I probably should have. Like,
so
I watched U.S. Marshals a couple times when it came out.
You gotta see Blade then. All right. Anyways, at the beginning of Blade, for anyone who's seen it, it's a literal bloodbath, a little vampire party. But that's what it feels like to me that Washington's accumulated. Just a lot of warm bodies in one room. That's what their team building is. Are they good? Are they fat? They're slow. They're fast. Doesn't matter. Just warm bodies. Get them all in one room. That's the Washington Commanders building team building strategy for me for 2024.
I'm looking back at Wesley Snipes' IMDb. It really is just a lot of Demolition Man and White Man Can't Jump, obviously. But yeah, I support Wesley Snipes' early work.
So you have Demolition because there's some other ones. New Jack City.
Yeah.
Major
Major League, obviously.
Yep. Yeah, filmed in Milwaukee, I believe. I'm blanking on one. I'm thinking of an action movie and I'm blanking on it, and it's gonna.
We'll revisit this when we have more time. Let's get to some teams.
Not hour and 15 minutes into a day 4 free agency.
Exactly. Let's swing back here to maybe a team or two that even if you didn't dislike it, because we don't, it's incomplete now because we don't know what the second wave is going to look like. But have there been a couple approaches over the last couple of days that just made you scratch your head a little bit?
I mean, I can't keep ragging on them, but the Jags, just what are you doing, guys? That is number one to me. I wouldn't say like scratching my head, but it was more just like, oh, really? That's what you're doing? Is the Raiders signing Gardner Minshew? It was kind of just more like, oh, dang, I kind of maybe it was a Fields landing spot or something like that. Like I kind of thought they could have maybe gone with a cool path I shouldn't say cool. It's not cool if you're a Raiders fan. An interesting path. I think this offseason. I shouldn't be shocked, but the kind of Cowboys kind of doing that. Nothing. It's just kind of funny to me. I shouldn't be totally shocked because that is kind of more their MO, and really more of a TBD because I want to see how they stick the landing. Because I'm not saying good or bad is the Eagles. I just want to see how they stick this landing with how this kind of remake of their kind of roster is kind of gone. I want to see the rest of the moves, how he never stops, how he never sleeps. I want to see even the draft. So I'm putting the Eagles as a TBD, not good or bad.
The way that I'll frame this is I've got questions. The way that Seattle has approached this, that the big contract for Leonard Williams, them cutting both of the safeties, and now we don't really know. They signed Rayshon Jenkins, but I guess it's just Julian Love. So what the back end is going to look like, and then what are they going to do at linebacker?
Way more measured than I thought they would be. Yeah.
What are they going to? The linebacker thing is a big question. They signed George Fant to a pretty sizable swing tackle contract. I think that the swing tackle thing is something I want to dig into a little bit more next week.
Because how much was it? How much was his contract?
2 years for $14 million.
No, 3 years, 21. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Oh, dang it. Oh, I thought it was $7 million a year. So I thought it was that.
It's 2 years, $14 million, but that's a max contract.
Okay,
so
okay.
I think that $7 million swing tackle market, again, this to me feels like teams that have dealt with tackle injuries, specifically Giants, Seahawks, being like, I'm not living that life anymore. If one of these guys goes down, I want somebody that I can count on to at least give us functional play. I think that's happened with tackles in a couple specific situations, and that's happened with backup quarterbacks in a couple specific situations, which I totally understand.
Which injuries are the most devastating to your team? Offensive line,
tackles and quarterbacks.
Yeah. So let's shore it up. Let's make sure our bottom never falls out. That's really what it is.
The other one I point out
sounded weird.
The other one I would point out is the Niners. It's not necessarily that I dislike it. I just wasn't sure how they were going to go about the defensive line moves. Yeah. And for them to be measured the way they have on the edge. So to go get Leonard Floyd and then, oh my goodness, guy whose name I cannot remember.
Gross Matos. Yeah.
Yes, Yetur Gross Matos. So that being their plan opposite Nick Bosa, not necessarily what I expected. I expected them to be a little bit more aggressive in going to get that other piece rather than just trying to get some rotational guys the way that they have.
Yeah, I again, that's not one that's good or bad to me. It's in that TBD kind of like, okay, like, all right, that's how you're going about it. Like
I've got questions. That's how I framed this.
Things that make you go, Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. I'm with you on that one, the 49ers. I'm not like mad, disappointed, or anything like that. Just kind of like, oh, okay. All right. That's how you're going about it. All right.
Last one here, because you were excited about it on Twitter, and it's worth mentioning. Coleman Shelton signs a 1-year deal with the Bears. I like this as well. Formerly of the Rams, he was their starting center for multiple years. Yes. Now you've created a competition with Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton at center. So you have depth on your interior spots. I like that. So it makes a lot of sense. The center and that center competition is something I had circled for the Bears this offseason. And the way that they've approached it, I think, is completely fine with me.
Even if Shelton is not a like outstanding, a needle mover, he is a competent center. And the thing is, too, is he handles a lot pre-snap. So if the Rams put a lot on him and to get it right with Stafford and everything. And I always thought they had a great operation when Shelton took over there. No, I really like this. I thought this is just a smart move. Again, we just talked about shoring up your offensive line and make sure the bottom doesn't fall out, especially center. Like that's the thing. You need 2 workable centers on your roster. At least my dad's philosophy was always having 3. So everybody had to cross train. So this has been a huge thing about the Bears the last few years. So frustrating to watch Mustafa there for way too long playing center because they had nobody else to play.
Lucas Patrick was out of his depth.
Patrick, just because they had to play. You want a guy that's like actually knows the operation, the mechanics of it. So I actually like the signing a lot because I think he's a nice kind of starting level center in this league and does a lot of smart things. And
they signed Matt. We're getting really deep in the weeds on Bears offensive line construction now, but they signed Matt Pryor as well, who is not a starting tackle in the league, but he's been a swing tackle for a long time. So they have a swing tackle. They have interior line depth with Bates now. I like the way they've constructed that group. Yep. The last thing for Chicago with me, if I was checking up needs before the offseason started, wide receiver 2, safety, center, edge. They've done the safety thing with Kevin Byard. They've done the offensive line construction in pretty much every single spot. Receiver still possible in the draft. I'm curious where they get that secondary edge piece from because there are not a lot of guys left. DJ Wanham, formerly of the Vikings, was on their radar. He just signed with the Panthers. So how they get workable edge play just to give themselves some flexibility with that 9th overall pick. That's the next thing that I'm curious about.
Davion Clowney, come on down.
That's one of the names I had thought about. I think had visited the Panthers, so him potentially signing there. Maybe that precludes them from signing Clowney. But I think they had enough needs at edge where they could probably get both of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens. But again, I'm more intrigued by the minutia of the Bears offseason than I have been in a very long time. So I hate to bore you guys with it. Because
that's when you get to the building the minutia, that means you have the other pieces, and that's the fun stuff.
You'd hope so.
You would
hope so.
Hey.
Even though the missing out on Danielle Hunter is going to hurt my heart, but we can talk about that a little bit later. That is all we got
for the beard and the hat.
For the beard and the hat, yes. It's the first time I've had the beard in a while. I was on vacation and I didn't shave for long enough that I worked through the awkward stage, and my wife convinced me to keep it. So we're gonna see how long it sticks. But
it's like I did. I didn't shave my mustache for 2 months and nobody noticed. So at least people notice. I got the wispiest facial hair.
It's funny because for most people it would make you look older, but for me, she was like, it makes me look younger because it reminds her of how I looked when we met. Because I used to have one all the time because it was to hide the fact that I had the beer face.
Same.
So I haven't had one in a while, but that's neither here nor there. All right, guys, that's all we got. Sincerely appreciate you all listening. That is our last show for this week. Football GM will be available to you guys tomorrow on Saturday. Saturday. If you guys listen to them Thursday, they'll be available on Saturday in their normal time. And then we'll be coming to you with our next show on this feed on Monday, hopefully with Diana. We'll see what we can do with that. But that is the next time we'll be coming your way. For now, that is all we've got. Sincerely appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.